How are we doing, everybody? It is your friendly local neighborhood Sandwhichpants here today. By friendly, I mean feral, and by local, I mean probably not to you. However, I don't know, honestly. We're gonna go over stuff. I've been having one hell of a week. Yesterday was full of a bunch of dumb shit. Let's be completely honest. Like, utterly full of stupidity. Including dealing with Alia, I don't know how you pronounce their name, its name. Alia does anarchy, is how I've been pronouncing it. So, been dealing with a lot of that, as well as dealing with so much other shit going on politically and personally. Oh, great. Yeah, we're just dropping frames constantly, aren't we? Why? I don't even have that much going on here. I'll just exit all of that. I don't care. Exit that, too. Let's just try and get the most solid connection we can. So, as some of you may have heard, some of you may know, there is an individual by the name of Caleb Maupin. This is actually going to be a huge deal mostly about Maupin. So, let's do this retrospective here. Yeah, we're going to go over this first. First things first. No. Gotta start at the beginning. So, the thing here is, Caleb Maupin is somebody who likes to style himself as a communist, a big radical, if you will. However, his brand of communism always seems to be supporting whatever far-right and fascist movement is going on. So, you tell me, is that really actually a socialist if he's willing to support things like the truckers' convoy out of Canada, which was led by fascist white nationalists? He's supporting Russia invading Ukraine. He'll hand-wave that a little bit and say that Russia shouldn't do it, but it's because of Ukraine, which is just fascist apologia. What else is it? Jan 6th, he supports the insurrectionary act undertaken by far right-wing groups. So, I don't know. It seems bad. It all just seems bad, in my opinion. All the stuff he seems to advocate for. He's also a huge proponent of having everything go the way that the USSR did. As far as, its structure and stuff. He wants to organize society in that manner. Which is fascistic. They were a authoritarian government that took control of corporate power. So they were state capitalist, which, realistically, if you just break it down, okay, the economic presupposition, the economic prescription of fascism, is having corporate and state power rolled together. It's not specifically corporations taking the power of states. So state capitalism is fascist. I know that there are some people who would be like, no, it's just the next step in the way to socialism, but they are lying to you. They're lying. Why? Because they have one quote from Marx stating that that's a theoretical way to go, and then there's mostly Lenin. It's mostly Lenin and Stalin and Mao, who were all fascist. Let's be completely honest here. Lenin. Let me touch on these kind of in order. Lenin was not somebody who was a champion of progressive causes. Loud noise. Lenin didn't give a singular fuck about progressive causes. Pretty homophobic, transphobic. He was pretty obsessed with power. And a lot of the only good writing I've ever read from Lenin is State and Revolution. Because that's when he had an anarchist streak in his writing. It's how he got the anarchists to side with him. And then he betrayed them and killed them. His leadership and ideology, the way that he communicated what he wanted to do, is actually what led to two other terrible people fighting for control of the USSR. One of them, Leon Trotsky, who, while bad, actually fucking awful. I need to look more into Trotsky overall, but was not as bad as Stalin. Trotsky was just smarter than Stalin. He wasn't as charismatic, he wasn't a strong man the same way, but he was an authoritarian. The Vanguard Party idea set socialism and communism and any sort of left-wing movement back by like a millennia, I swear. Some people would say just a century. I say it's further than that. Because we're nowhere near where we were. Even in America especially, you take a look back in the time of the New Deal, there were socialist, anarchist, communists all pushing in the same direction to try and abolish capitalism, which all we got out of that was some fucking minor reforms that didn't even hold up another 80 years. I wonder why. Why is it that whenever worker advocacy groups manage to get a win, the instant some right-wing group gets into power, they start stripping it the fuck away? I wonder. Couldn't possibly tell you an answer to that one. Anyways, Lenin himself has a book that actually made me very distrustful. It's called Left Communism and Infantile Disorder, in which he's essentially shitting on progressive causes. He was a right-wing grifter masquerading as a communist. He didn't do anything communist. They established Workers' Council during the revolution. He abolished them all afterwards. He gave himself, primary control over the country, economy, central planning. Central planning is a scam. His ideology and way of communicating his ideology forward brought out Leon Trotsky, who was also a right-wing, let's say he was a right-wing lunatic. But he believed in a global communist revolution, as opposed to Stalin, who believed you could achieve communism in a singular country. Although neither of them actually were communists, the thing they were calling communism is state capitalism, which is the economic prescription of fascism. There are some small separations between Stalin and your average fascist, but not a whole lot, It's very minute. So, Stalin, very bad person. Secret police, disappearing people, super paranoid, ran Trotsky out of the country because Trotsky ran against him to lead the USSR, whole bunch of shit. Stalin was a terrible person, committed a lot of killings, famine, shit like that. An attempt at a genocide, So, Stalin was a bad dude. Trotsky was a bad dude. Lenin was a bad dude. And Mao did the exact same playbook. The exact same one. Do we not learn from this shit? I don't know. See, a lot of people who believe in Marxism-Leninism will point to groups from 40, 50, 60 years ago and be like, well, they were Marxist-Leninists. Well, guess what? They were getting misinformation from Russia. They were getting propagandized from these other sources instead of having the actual fucking, all of the information available to them. Like we do today. And we can go back and look, and we can see Stalin was a very bad dude. I bring all of this up specifically to get you ready. Oh, Marxist-Leninists are also called tankies. Just for those of you who don't know. God, I need to shave again. Yeah, they're dumb. I have no respect for anyone who is a Marxist-Leninist today. Anyways, we're going to go over 2 things. Well, 3 things in this regard. Playback speed, we're going to go with 1.5 times. They're both fairly fast speakers, but I want to get this over with faster than normal. So, the first one we're going to go through is a debate from 2020 between Caleb Maupin and Vosh. And to clear my biases, okay, good. And go to my profile. I'm going to go ahead and go live here so you can see. It says right here. Voshite. So I am a big fan of Vosh, personally. But, you know. That's just that. That's all there is to it. And I will check my notifications later because I don't trust them. So let's just jump into it. Are tankies comrades debating Caleb Maupin? I refuse to give Maupin any views if I can help it, so.
So do you guys want me to give like an intro, like the rules and so on? Is that how we want to do this, or do you guys just want to start?
Sure, go ahead and lay out how we're going to do this.
Okay, so I guess the format that we agreed on is 5-minute opening statements, 5-minute closing statements for both Caleb and Vosh, in between which there will just be...
And yes, this is Vosh's POV. Yes, he looks different now than he did then. It's been 2 years. Big deal, you know.
Be a period of time where you guys just...
Alright, there you go. You actually get to physically see Caleb Maupin. I'm sitting on my phone. No wonder I can't find it. Just take a moment to appreciate. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm perfectly okay showing that notification on my Twitter. Notifications. Boom. Vosh community highlights, like my tweet. Pat socks are brainless. You'll actually see that bit in a little while. Anyways, the moderator here is Mal the Infidel. This is Caleb Maupin. You will not be seeing Mouth the Infidel, who I also think is honestly kind of a dumb fuck. But, I shouldn't say he's a dumb fuck. I should say that I think he is misguided ideologically in some aspects. However, from what I've seen, I mean, I've gotten into it with Mouthy on Twitter and stuff before, but I don't think he's, like, a bad person the way I think Caleb Maupin is. Full disclosure, full transparency here. I am of the belief that Caleb Maupin is a fucking demon sent here to terrorize people, to be a plague on the planet, and to give leftists a bad name. I mean, he was paid by RT specifically to give leftists a bad name and to help try and destabilize America, which, I mean, you know, hating America is kind of based, but you don't have to try and weaken it for Russia.
Sort of have a free-flowing, open exchange. I guess my duty as moderator is to try and keep you guys away from personal insults and keep you guys on topic and try to make sure we're, going with one point at a time to try and keep this productive. So I guess if we can try to stay away from all that stuff, that would be great. There's I guess, a 1 hour time limit for this debate, but besides that, I think that's all. So I guess I'll just let you guys talk. I guess which one of you guys wants to go first?
I can go first if you want.
I'm cool with going first as well. Who wants it more?
You can do it, Bosch. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. This will be pretty short, I think. Okay, wait. First of all, I want to say, for shout-out purposes, the person who's moderating this, named Mouthy Infidel, is actually a very competent debater and a person who I respect quite a bit, in spite of the fact that he probably thinks that I'm a rad lib. So thank you for moderating. Short notice, I know. Okay.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me to moderate.
No problem. So with that being said, but again, we're not like friends, okay? No bias. With that being said, I'm a socialist. Broadly libertarian socialist. I value things like freedom and democracy and I guess respecting the rights of the individual. And I think that sort of syncretically we can arrive from those positions to a broader socialist society. With that being said, I guess the reason why we're here right now is because you called me out on Twitter a little while ago, at the beginning of May, Caleb Maupin. You said a lot of really weird stuff and it made me feel like we had some pretty substantial disagreements. Stuff like you kept saying like shame, like saying that I say all tankies are fascists or what have you, claiming that like I'm spitting on the legacy of the Black Panther Party or of other people who were revolutionary socialists in their time, telling me like shame. You said shame quite a bit, which felt like I was kind of being like scolded by like a school teacher or something. But yeah, I guess I was a little bit confused.
Vaj was more charitable to tankies back then because he didn't think all tankies were fascists, and since then he's been proven wrong.
Confused by your intentionality there. I'd be interested in seeing if we could arrive at an amicable resolution. Also, if I do at any point...
Comrade Deggy Kang. Vosh is a fake leftist. But all tankies are fascist? True! Thank you, Dual Edge.
Seem tired or out of it, it is not because I'm disinterested in this conversation. It's because I just suffered critical brain damage following an earlier debate today. But hopefully that will not affect me. I'm a strong man, and I will try my best. Okay, that's all I have to say.
All right. Shall I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Bosch, we may not agree on a lot, but one thing I think we can agree on is that Fox News is no good. And on Fox News, one of the tactics they will use is they'll say to the Muslim guest, they'll say, do you denounce Hamas? And of course the Muslim guest will say, I denounce terrorism, I'll oppose that. That's not enough. You must denounce Hamas. When they have an anti-racist activist or an activist against police brutality on Fox News, they'll say, do you denounce Black Lives Matter? Do you denounce the radicals and the Black Panthers? And they'll respond, of course we denounce violence. Of course we denounce lawbreaking. No, that's not good enough. Somebody in the black movement said something radical. We want you to denounce them. This tactic of demanding that people denounce other people in their movements is a tactic that the right wing has used against progressive forces and consistently uses. And the way it manifests it among socialists and against those who advocate building a socialist society is the demand, sure, you can believe in socialism, but you must denounce as loud as possible every country around the world trying to build socialism. You must repeat State Department propaganda against them, and if you don't do that, you are somehow the equivalent of a Holocaust denier or a Nazi. And that is very, very dangerous. It's a big problem in our movement. Now, Vosh, I know that you and I have very, very different definitions of socialism. I'm not going to change your mind, but I'm going to tell you the definition of socialism that I understand. It comes from Frederick Engels, from his book, which is one of the most important books in the history of Marxism, Socialism.
No. Frederick Engels was an authoritarian. I do not believe that you can be an authoritarian and a communist. I do not think that that is a thing that you can be. And of course I'm right on this. How do I know that I'm right? Well, okay, so Marx didn't really put a whole lot of time and effort into the super specifics on communism. He kind of had some broader ideas, and then he spent a lot of his time writing about freedom, not equality. Freedom, which you cannot have under an authoritarian. And then criticizing capitalism a whole bunch. He did not really favor authoritarianism, at all. And by did not really favor, I mean he didn't. See, there was a thing back when Marx was writing. He wrote a phrase, dictatorship of the proletariat. Well, you see, people take that and they go, well, dictator. So obviously, he's talking about authoritarianism. And the reason I know that that's what they say is because I've actually heard them say that exact same thing. They refer to dictatorship of the proletariat as some sort of weird authoritarian jerk-off sesh. No. Actually, that's not what it is. The term, let me make sure. Yeah, no, my mic, I forgot to unmute my mic, I'm sorry. So I'll start back over on this.
But I'm going to tell you the definition of socialism that I understand. It comes from Frederick.
All right, Frederick Engels. Frederick Engels was an authoritarian. Plain and simple. You cannot be an authoritarian and a communist. Here's why I say so. Marx, when he was writing, he didn't extensively write about the specifics on communism. He kind of laid out a broad groundwork and kind of a basis for what it is. And then he wrote a whole bunch about freedom and criticizing capitalism, which he was really good at. He was a really good critic of capitalism. It took other people making some other prescriptions and revising what dictatorship meant. That's actually when it was used in Marx's time, because he wrote about the dictatorship of the proletariat. Back in Marx's time, dictatorship meant rule of, not what you think of now with authoritarian government crackdowns, secret police, Stalin, Mao, Hitler shit. All of them are authoritarians. I'm gonna need you to shush, kitty. No, in fact, they were, Marx was pretty against authoritarianism in that regard. However, people like Caleb Maupin and Lenin and Mao kind of have used a revisionist thought process for dictatorship of the proletariat, They think of it as the authoritarianism thing, where you have the vanguard party, because of Lenin, worst thing he's ever done. You have the vanguard party take leadership roles in government and tell pretty much everybody what to do based on what they think, and fake democracy and shit. Marx was a big fan of democracy. He really was. He loved that shit. So, I do not like Frederick Engels as much as I don't like Stalin, Mao, Lenin, Kim Il-sung, as you can see here in the chat. Ho Chi Minh is better, but not really, from what I understand more of now, with like the execution quota for landlords. I hate landlords too, but you ain't gotta kill them. That's the deal there. Like, there are people who were probably, if it came down to it, and there was like, well, personally, I think it would be fascists trying to enact violence against everybody to take power, and everybody else would hopefully stand up against them, and we would then win.
Engels, from his book, which is one of the most important books in the history of Marxism, Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, where he says that socialism is when, quote, the proletariat seizes public power and by means of this transforms the socialized means of production, shipping them from the hands of the bourgeoisie into public property. Social
This is why I dislike Engels.
Socialized production upon a predetermined plan becomes henceforth possible, and anarchy in social production vanishes.
That's another one. There's actually two in there during this portion that I unpaused for. Sorry, I know I'm pausing a lot, but I really have to kind of delve into this. Frederick Engels is not stupid. So when he is saying anarchy, he's talking about the actual Kropotkin, Proudhon, Malatesta, Franz Ferdinand, fucking Rudolf Rocker. There's so many others. The anarchists. Not anarchy as in chaos and shit. He's also talking about centralized production, central planning, which is a dogshit economic method. It fails every fucking time. So, yeah. Vosh is dying, you can tell by looking at his eyes. Yeah. Because he's already so over it. This is why I don't put any stock into fucking, communist theory. Because so much of it has been bastardized, misunderstood, rewritten, and then followed as dogma. It's not dogma. Marx has been wrong. He was in favor of central planning. They were wrong. They were wrong on a decent amount of shit. He didn't miss that often, but he did sometimes fucking miss. Yes, you're annoying. I love you. Come here, baby. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come on. Come here. Oh, come here. Come here. You're so annoying. Can't pick you up because you will fuck me up if I try. Do you see the baby? The baby. Alright.
And I think that there are societies around the world that have done that have seized the means of production. There have been mass anti-imperialist and socialist working class peasant movements that have risen up, seized control of the means of production. And yes, they've done bad things. Yes, human rights have been violated. Yes, crimes have been committed, and no one is here to defend those bad things. But I think as those of us who want to build socialism in the United States, I think we can learn from those struggles. And I think that portraying tankies as if they are fascists or as if they are the equivalent of white supremacists is a big blunder. And this kind of tanky baiting has been a threat to the entire progressive movement. The war on organized labor began in the 1950s when they pushed some of the most revolutionary labor leaders like Harry Bridges and William Z. Foster out of the labor movement with this anti-Stalinism, this anti-tankyism. And a lot of Trotskyites and social democrats went along with it, and it hurt the entire labor movement. Bernie Sanders' campaign, he was tanky baited because he said that Cuba's healthcare system has been good. 60 Minutes did a hit piece on him. That became the whole focus. Bernie Sanders won't denounce existing socialism loudly enough. This hurts the entire progressive movement. It's not helpful. And I hope that your audience, they may not agree with me about China or the former Soviet Union or that, but I hope that they will understand that trying to divide the movement, painting, people in the movement who are anti-racist and anti-fascist as if they are somehow the equivalent of the far right, which is very dangerous and rising and pushing hate, that I hope people in your audience will rethink that and try to...
The total fucking bullshit, grandstanding, bloviating. He's so hard to listen to. The problem is Moppet isn't anti-fascist. He supports Jan 6. He supported the truckers' convoy, which was calling for Trudeau to step down to be replaced by their own hand-picked fascist. And we're talking about great replacement and how the vaccines were there to try and kill white people. They were saying Anglo-Saxon to try and get around the censors, but, that's kind of the thing they were saying. And it was bullshit, obviously. But people are susceptible to this kind of thing, Like, he supports Russia invading Ukraine. He supports China trying to take Taiwan and Tibet. He supports, I think he supports the Gazikotso guys, the Black Hammer. He's allies with Alexander Dugin. He says he's only sat with him one time, but there's like multiple meetings that they've been to together, and they're both nodding along to each other's stuff. So I don't know.
To build unity among progressive forces as we struggle against the prison industrial complex, the economic crisis, the rising police state, and try to get to a better world. That's where I'm at, Vosh. Let's talk.
Yeah, okay, so there are a number of points here that I think are maybe a mischaracterization of some of the things that I believe in. First of all, with regards to, so your ultimate argument is one against gatekeeping, effectively, that there's ultimate harm done to the movement when you engage in any action to distinguish the broader, the right-left from the parts of it that you want to excise. Unfortunately, excising undesirables from your movement is, I think you as a fan of the USSR would probably know, basically a necessary part of any revolutionary activity. With regards to the tankies that are referred to, for example, I'm not referring to people who, for example, are at any point not as critical of the USSR as I am, or people who see value in some of the revolutionary movements in the developing world. I think these are perfectly fine things. I'm talking about people who aggressively engage in optics, which are antithetical to the things that I believe in. I'm not denouncing them because Fox News is telling me to. I'm denouncing them because they are my enemy and because they make us look bad. So, for example, while these people are by no means the majority, there are tankies who defend Stalin. Anybody who is in any way, shape, or form in favor of either of the two components of socialism that you laid out, whether that be worker control of the means of production or the destruction of the commodity form, should despise Stalin. He was not a good man. And he did not do good for the movement. He just isn't a good person to hinge public representation on. And I wonder, then, how you would feel about the odds of Bernie Sanders succeeding in the United States of America, not if he refrained from denouncing the healthcare in Cuba or whatever, but if somebody had asked him, do you like Stalin? And Bernie had failed to answer in the negative. My issue here is that I think we're blurring the lines between people who have minor ideological differences but a shared goal and people who do not share a goal with me. Because there are people who defend bad things. When I hear people who are unironically defending, it's off the hands, like the Holdomer denials, like, oh, it was necessary, the kulaks were hoarding, nothing they could have done, they diverted grain. Like, this is abhorrent to me. Not only because it's morally impermissible, as far as I'm concerned, to deny, defend, the actions which led to a genocide, but also because it's materially wrong. And also because it makes us look really bad. Whether we like it or not, socialism and its development in the United States of America is going to be predicated on our ability to relate to the average person with things we know they care about, whether that's stuff like healthcare or ending foreign war or bringing about a reconciliation between those who have wealth divided between them. I don't think we can achieve this by allowing people who adopt the aesthetics, optics, and rhetoric of authoritarians to run rampant within our movement.
All right. May I respond?
Yes, please.
I think you're making a little bit of a mistake. Now, there are two fronts I want to respond on. I can respond regarding myself, and I can respond regarding tankies in general. In regards to myself, I have no interest in defending Stalin's personality and convincing anybody that Stalin was a good guy. I'm interested in defending socialism, not personalities. But you have to admit, the way socialism is presented in the United States, the argument generally is that it's failed everywhere it's ever been tried. It's created nothing but gulags and death and misery. And the response you generally get from socialists is, oh, that's all true, but I'm just so smart that I'll do it better. And that's a ridiculous argument. You look like a fool when you make that argument. You have to be able to deal with the history of the 20th century and point out that everything isn't completely black and white, that mistakes were made, but big achievements were made as well, like defeating the Nazis, like electrifying and industrializing an entire country. And that's the conversation I'm interested in having. I'm not interested.
I will admit, they did industrialize really fast in the USSR. So, during the time the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was already in place, they were dividing up spheres of influence for where they would control after they won the war. See, there's this image right here. This was, fighting on the Eastern Front. But they had a whole idea to divide up all of the spheres, all of the world in spheres of influence. And the only reason this fell through is because Stalin wanted Bulgaria, and Hitler didn't want him to have that. What? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. She's old. Just started watching her. Yeah. Okay, Molotov remained firm and sought to remove German troops from Finland and gain a warm water port in the Baltic. Soviet foreign policy calculations were predicated by the idea that the war would be a long-term struggle. They were smarter in that regard. and so German claims that the United Kingdom would be defeated swiftly were treated with skepticism. They were smarter in that regard, because Nazis were incompetent. They were all fucking dumb. In addition, Stalin sought to remain influential in Bulgaria and Yugoslavia. Yep, the Soviets presented a Stalin-drafted written counterproposal accepting the Four-Power Pact, but including Soviet rights to Bulgaria and a world sphere of influence to be centered on the area around Iraq and Iran. Germany did not respond. Regarding the counterproposal, Hitler remarked to his top military chiefs that Stalin demands more and more. He's a cold-blooded blackmailer, and a German victory has become unbearable for Russia, so that she must be brought to her knees as soon as possible. And then Germany ended their alliance and invaded the Soviet Union. So the only reason they even fought the Nazis in the first place was because Hitler found Stalin to be too greedy with his wants, and so felt he had to invade. That's the thing.
In having conversations about Holodomor or the Moscow trials or anything like that. That's regarding me. However, when you characterize people who do question the historical narrative about the Soviet Union in this way, you need to recognize that you're talking about not just guys on the internet who might be obnoxious. Nelson Mandela was a tankie. I will read you what Nelson Mandela said in 1986. Quote, "The Soviet Union is the torchbearer for all the hopes and aspirations. In the Soviet Russia, genuine people have been transformed from genuine people's power, has been transformed from dreams into reality. The land of Soviets is a genuine friend and ally of all peoples fighting against the dark forces of world reaction." That's Nelson Mandela in 1986. So by saying that people that glorify the Soviet Union should be kicked out of your movement, you're disassociating from the African National Congress. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, he gave a speech in 1942 called "What Russia Means to Us," where he spoke glowingly about the Soviet Union, how it protected national minorities like Jews. He himself was Jewish, and he saw how important the Soviet Union was in fighting anti-Semitism around the world. He talked about their achievements in science and how the Soviet state made a big point of subsidizing scientific research and development. And Christopher Hitchens denounced Albert Einstein, saying that his greatest flaw was his defense of the Stalinist regime in the Soviet Union. Helen Keller, read her autobiography and the glowing things that she says about Lenin and the Bolsheviks at the same time they were suppressing the anarchists and all of that. To write off people that associate themselves with the USSR and its achievements, or with China, or with Vietnam, or with Cuba, or North Korea. Yes, I said North Korea. You know, the Black Panthers sent delegations to North Korea. The Black Panthers studied Juche ideology. The Black Panthers waved Mao's little red book. You should read Huey Newton's autobiography and see what he said about his time in China and how glowingly he speaks about Mao Zedong. Recognizing the achievements of existing socialism doesn't make you a lunatic, doesn't make you a wingnut. It makes you somebody who is open to understanding what's beyond capitalism. Now, my attitude toward these leaders is that we should study all of them and study both their failures and their achievements and blindly adhere and follow none of them. But as we move toward building socialism in the United States, we need to recognize that socialism here will be unique. We're not going to have Chinese socialism here. We're not going to have Russian socialism here. We're not going to have Venezuelan or Cuban socialism. When we have socialism in the United States, it will be a continuation of the progressive tradition. It will be the ideals of Frederick Douglass and John Brown and the suffragists and the labor movement. It will be that radical, anti-imperialist, anti-racist tradition of struggle in U.S. history taking power. But if you look at that history of struggle, some of the greatest voices
We've got a lot to go over so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that there's two main strands here to deal with. There's the point of how we should engage with historical attempts at socialism, and there's also the question.
Oh, you
Caleb's charges.
Right, I've got, I think, an address of that written down, if I may. Because I feel like
I
it was
was just going to say, if you wanted... Yeah, I was just going to say, like, if you wanted to, because I remember you said earlier that you wanted to stick with, like, one thing at a time. If you wanted to go over each of these main strands individually, we could do that unless you don't want to.
I'll broadly address this, and I think we can get into the nitty-gritty afterwards. I'm sure we can find plenty to disagree with there. So this is the problem that I have when I talk with everyone who believes stuff like what you believe in. None of what you just said actually addressed my points, because I've never said it makes you a tankie to acknowledge the benefits or the successes of countries that call themselves socialist. What's more, the material conditions around the time of Albert Einstein or of Helen Keller or of Nelson Mandela were extremely different to those today. And their individual opinions on the extent to which the USSR has brought hope to the world has nothing to do with the material reality of how we should advocate for socialism today. What's more, nothing that any of these people said fundamentally disagrees with my ideology. There were great successes committed by all of these societies. But ultimately, like, if you back up, like, what you essentially just did to me was a massive appeal to authority. I criticized authoritarianism in the first, like, chunk that I got, where I said, like, these are the values which are antithetical to mine. And then you responded like, well, here are a bunch of people, here are a fuck ton of people who have ever agreed to these. I've read Huey Newton's autobiography. I'm very familiar with the ideology of the Black Panther Party, the group which initially got me into leftism. I know the fact that they're Maoists. I know that they had some ideas which contradicted with my own and many which do not. But the fact remains, at the end of all of it, that when we are talking today about what we want to advocate for, I do not think there is any room for people who glorify or defend authoritarianism or historical revisionism. You said earlier in that response, challenging the narrative. I'm very suspicious of that term, challenging the historical narrative, because I've heard it from people who, and I know you don't want me to draw any comparisons here, would probably be reasonably called Nazis by both of us. At the end of the day, we have to accept the fact that we do live in a highly, highly biased socioeconomic point in time. But when we're making arguments in favor of moving forward, we can't refer to the imagined successes of these societies we defend because they weren't successes.
Yep. See, there's not a whole lot that I need to say because he's going to address it all. I'm mostly showing you the character of Caleb Maupin and the kind of dishonest bullshit artist he is.
Not in the eyes of the average American. Now, you can maybe make slim arguments for Cuba. I think you can, because Cuba's done pretty phenomenally, all things considered. And if you want to go for niche examples where Java has had a good project going on its own, but if we're talking about advocating the interests of the average American, any attempt whatsoever to defend the historical legacy of these societies, which have been denigrated by history, is going to come off making us look like wingnuts. And I know that in large part because people who advocate the way Bernie Sanders does are infinitely more effective at drawing people towards leftism than people who go by hardline Marxist, here's the historical reality, here's the theory you should read, here are the people we should stand. I guess just this old world tendency towards advocacy is very, very counterproductive in my mind, especially since I know for a fact a lot of the more active tanky communities are not only in disagreement with me on some historical issues, but are also morally reprehensible. For instance, when it comes to stuff like radical gender ideology, many of them are transphobes, at least in my experience engaging with some of these communities. Many of them are class reductionists, which I think is very funny for people who would stand the ideology of the Black Panther Party. These are things and I feel like I can't call them out because if I do, I just get called a radlib, you know?
Doesn't matter. That's why I'm pretty sure my thing says most based shit lib, which I will probably have to change at some point, because for being an anarchist, tankies would just call me a fucking shit lib. So they don't know anything. It doesn't matter. They know the propaganda they've read, and they overanalyze theory under the fucking framework of Marxism-Leninism and authoritarian ideology. So anytime they read something like Dictatorship of the Proletariat, they're like, oh, yes, I get to be in charge.
Okay, so I'll respond to that. First of all, according to your definition...
Wait, QAnon Boy, Complete Strawman by Vosh, nice. What's Strawman?
And then I'm not a tanky. I know that a lot of bad things happened in the Soviet Union, and I would say that probably the political repression in the Soviet Union, the lack of free speech and open debate, weakened the Soviet Union. The fact that people who disagreed with the government were disappeared, that basically made them so their arguments were never answered, right? It made it look like the government had something to hide, and they should have been politically educating the population and engaging them in debate and discourse, which in Cuba, you'll look at what they've done.
No, see, he wants re-education.
They mobilized the population to argue with anti-communist elements, and similar things have been
and then brainwashing
done in China.
May I ask one question to clarify?
Similar things have been done in China, like Xinjiang's concentration camps. That's the kind of thing that these fascists want.
Fine. Do you consider the modern-day state of China to be a proletarian state?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I think it has a lot of problems, and I think that there are many things about it that are corrupt, but the fact that they have maintained, an economy where the means of production are organized by the state and raised 800 million people out of poverty, I think is a positive thing. But before we go on, before we pivot away from this, I want to answer one point. You talked about transphobia and such. The first transgender activist in modern U.S. history was Leslie Feinberg, who was a tanky, a leader of the Workers' World Party. The first gay rights activist in modern U.S. history was Harry Hay, who was a member of the Communist Party USA. The first Broadway play to defend gay rights by Lillian Hellman, and she was a tanky if there ever was one. She was a very vehement defender of Stalin. So
how do you feel about
generalizing when you try to yes, there is definitely there's a big problem of homophobia and banning of gay people from communist parties historically, no doubt about it. But I believe that's a little bit of an oversimplification.
How do you feel about transgender people, if I might ask?
I think the way that they're treated is awful. Bullying, hate crimes, it's despicable. The way people, have been separated from their families, kicked out of their households. I feel nothing but empathy for people that are transgender and face all the hate and discrimination on that basis.
You agree that gender reassignment surgery is a valid way of addressing their, gender dysphoria in many cases.
If an adult chooses to do that, that's their business. It has nothing to do with me.
Okay, well.
I would like to try to get away from the trans.
I kind of forgot that I have to join a Zoom meeting for the Progressive Victory 2022. So I have to download Zoom on my fucking phone.
Gender stuff, just in order to keep us on topic.
Oh, sure, yeah. I just feel like sometimes reactionary tendencies are hidden by tankies under the guise of a class ideology. Let's not address this. We'll only end up splitting the movement over hairs. But yeah, we can.
Sure, I got you.
Hate crimes, discrimination, bullying is something that any progressive would oppose. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. What about China, though? I guess this would be like something I characterize as a tanky tendency. I can't get behind the idea that China is a proletarian state. They have I mean, they have just a rabid market economy. The only difference is that it's all like broadly organized under a state apparatus. But that doesn't really lend towards the individual power of the worker.
Well, I think if you look at their economy, it doesn't function on the basis of profits. The state, which is rooted in communities, every building has Communist Party members in it. There are 90 million members of the Chinese Communist Party throughout the country. They're very well organized, and the state controls capital on behalf of the population. Now, they do it in a corrupt way sometimes, but overall, it's been very successful.
But individuals
Mass eradication of poverty, they've become the second largest economy in the world. Huge achievements, and it's because they don't function according to the capitalist logic. In 2015, the Chinese stock market, it crashed, and if a similar crash happened over here, there'd be riots in the streets compared to how dramatically it crashed. The country didn't even blink an eye because 90% of the population has nothing to do with the stock market. The state and the Communist Party run the economy, not profiteers and bankers. There's plenty of profiteers and bankers there, but they live in fear of a mass organization built by Mao Zedong in the mountains during a people's war that has taken power and transformed the country.
This is exactly what I mean. They don't live in fear of anything. They're incredibly powerful, and the only way in which they're restrained is by their state of unelected officials, not by the people. The reason the people don't revolt is because the Chinese people probably know what happens when they take to the streets and express anger with their government. If I had to guess at any broader political or socioeconomic motivation to keep them from going out, no. The average worker in China has absolutely no control or created. Precluding them from investment isn't the same as giving them control over the economy. They fulfill no component. They have a stock market and a market economy, which means they haven't abolished the commodity form, and individual workers have no more control over their respective businesses in China than American workers do over here in America. The only difference is that their state is more powerful. The only difference is that they've removed the democracy. I don't know if that brings people any closer towards socialism. That's one of the fundamental criticisms I have of the behavior of tankies. Sometimes I feel like tankies will call anything socialist as long as it's anti-American. But China certainly is, at least in a geopolitical sense. They're our largest opponent. But is that really not does that really fulfill the preconceived notion of what it means to be a proletarian state? You have to oppose the U.S. and be in dictatorship?
Well, I was thinking maybe one thing that we could zero in on is because it seems like part of your guys' disagreement is just might stem, I'm not sure because I haven't heard your definitions yet, but I suspect that maybe part of your guys' disagreement stems from a fundamental disagreement on what the definition of capitalism is. So I was thinking maybe you guys could each define what capitalism is to you in order to help us establish whether or not China is one by both your criteria.
All right. Well, I will first respond to what was said when they go out on strike. And actually, there are a huge amount of labor struggles going on in China, and you'll see many instances of the Chinese government supporting the workers against the corporations. We all know about the horrors that happened at Foxconn and the horrors that happened at, I believe it was Hyundai or a car manufacturer. And what is not told is how the Chinese government Communist Union went out on strike, and the Chinese government supported the striking workers and forced the bosses to change their conditions. There are many examples of that. Now, of course, there are things to the contrary that shouldn't go on. But I don't think that's a fair characterization. I think that the bosses in China, the business owners, live in fear of a state that, yes, wants to utilize them to bring in foreign investment, that yes, sees it very important to develop a market sector, but at the same time.
Okay, I might have to pick this up here in a little bit. So I hope you all have a great one, and I will be back.